All right, day 3 of AUSA. This is probably the next to the last Warriors Corner. So I think the 3 of us are probably the only thing between you and your flight home or getting ready for the Marshall dinner tonight. Real quick show of hands. How many were here last year for the Warriors Corner that we did? Okay. A lot's happened over the last year, okay? Much of what's happened, we're going to talk about it here a little bit as we go forward. But before we do that, and I'm joined here by my 2 battle buddies here, and I think many of you have probably seen the General Bassett, General Gallagher show. We've tag teamed a lot of these. Sometimes it's kind of the, what do you call it, Mutt and Jeff routine. Now it's with Doug here from the Mission Command Center of Excellence. I feel like it's more like Mo, Larry, and Curly routine here, but I think what we're going to do, the 3 of us are kind of, we bring the TRADOC Mission Command perspective, we bring the Army acquisition perspective from General Bassett, and then the Army Futures Command perspective from where we're going. You're going to hear a lot about capability sets, which did not exist last year at this time. After last year's AUSA, General Murray gave me some, as the new Army Futures Command commander, he said, hey, the roadmap you're on makes a lot of sense, but what you got to do is put this into capability sets over time so folks can understand what you're trying to accomplish. And since that time, we've been very focused on that. We brought everybody, all of our teammates together and laid out a roadmap with capability sets over time with tangible solutions along our 4 lines of effort. And we've been really focused hard on Cape Set 21. Capability Set 21 is stuff that's in the works today, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We're really focused right here today on Capability Set 23. So with that as a lead in, let's go ahead and show the video.
In a world where the enemy is sophisticated enough to jam and deny critical network traffic during wartime operations, on a battlefield where forces are so agile and adaptable, they can operate over a wide range of advanced commercial technology and communicate through multiple diverse pathways. At a time when data flows through an interconnected web of network capabilities to ensure soldiers get the information they need when and where they need it. The enemy is real. That force is our Army. And that time is now. To deliver the tactical network of 2028, the Network Cross-Functional Team with acquisition partners is closing critical gaps through enhanced network capability sets. Fielded on a 2-year basis beginning in 2021, these capability sets build off of each other and are infused with commercial solutions informed by soldier-led experimentation. Current network modernization is providing an integrated tactical network, or ITN, of advanced networking waveforms and radios, expeditionary satellite terminals, and applications leveraging commercial cellular connectivity in a secure but unclassified network environment. Future capability sets in 2023, 2025, and 2027 will build upon industry advancements to increase capacity and resilience of the network, provide automated network management and decision-making tools, improve data management, advance spectrum-efficient waveforms, and reduce electromagnetic signature. The Army's network is the cornerstone of our modernization efforts. Soldiers depend on it. Let's deliver.
All right. So as General Gallagher just mentioned, the PEO C3T right now is executing Capability Set 21 delivery. And we talk about this as a new way of doing business. In the past, we would have spent a few years trying to get the requirements right, trying to describe what future technology might be. And then we might have described a process for a number of years just to go contract and deliver for that capability. And one of the things we found over those years is we'd almost always get it wrong. And we'd be shooting behind the target. And we realized, as the chief mentioned yesterday, especially in the area of the network, we cannot apply an industrial age process of acquisition requirements and testing to information age capabilities. And so we brought that mindset to lead with experimentation, the art of the possible in technology, but we also recognize that we have to do that with some sense of discipline and rigor so that we can guarantee that it all works together on the battlefield. And so we started that discipline process here last spring with a preliminary design review on our CapeSat 23 network, where we established kind of the set of equipment that we think we're going to be able to field to brigades starting in 21. And so now between last spring and next spring, the team has about a year to drive towards an affordable capability set design using experimentation supported by the soldiers of the 1st of the 82nd Airborne Division and our partners with Jim Mingus there in the 82nd to help drive the final set of trade-offs that we need to make. Preliminary design review showed that we had a good sense of what we want to deliver. We're talking about new radios. We're talking about new waveforms. We're talking about new servers, new satellite capability. We're talking about new NetOps functions, new mission command applications, all being delivered, integrated together to make sure that it works for our soldiers to deliver in the 21 timeframe. And like I said, we have to do that with rigor. So we go from a preliminary design review this year to a critical design review next year. We go to an integrated test that shows that these things work together. And then we're buying, fielding, and then sustaining these capabilities until we have the next capability set right behind it. And so I kind of described in general that process, and the focus of today's Warriors Corner is going to be on what will be the art of the possible by the time of CapeSat 23. And I'll just remind everybody that CapeSat 23 doesn't show up in 23 out of the box, right? We need to start right now with available technologies and experimentation, and we have a roadmap that lays out what we think are the technologies that will be available to us in that time frame. Just like our old requirements documents would probably guess wrong on technology, the projections we have about technology are also probably wrong. So if you think your technology is ready, and I'm talking to some great industry partners that are here at AUSA, if you think your technologies are ready, we need to know now, because what we're showing you in terms of projected technologies are not set in stone, and that's really about how we're doing business differently within this construct. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to General Gallagher to talk about CapeSat 23.
Yeah, so if you look at this chart, you know, we talked about CapeSat 21. We are already in a way of really converging between now and next April, and General Bassett is leading that effort with the rest of us in support, and we are working it joined at the hip. As we look at Capability Set 23, what's happening right here, right now, what you see in the upper left-hand quadrant here is what we call Line Effort 1. It's all about network transport. And what we know right now, the solutions we're delivering in 21 will make our network more simple and intuitive. It's going to make it more expeditionary. And where we believe we're going, based on the science and technology efforts of our CSI, our C5 ISR teammates, and what we're hearing from you, from industry, on where technology is going, we believe in the upper left-hand quadrant we're going to have some capability that's going to significantly improve the capacity and resilience of our network transport. Okay? We're going to be able to continue what we're doing with the integrated tactical network in our infantry brigades, as General Bassett mentioned in 21, getting the feedback from General Bassett, or General Mingus and the team at Fort Bragg, and we're going to expand that to our strikers, and we're going to expand that to the Armor Brigade combat teams, and figure out how do we optimize it for speed and distance. The other things we're going to be leveraging is mid-Earth orbit, low Earth orbit satellite constellations. How will these fit into our network backbone design to give us high capacity, low latency throughput, so we can leverage things like cloud and the perfect mix of optimized cloud and edge computing and all those types of things. So really, if you think about the upper left quadrant there, it's about additional capacity and resiliency in the backbone, which will enable our ability to move to line of effort 2, which I'll turn over to General Bassett, but that's our compute and storage and the ability to run applications. So back over to you, sir.
So integrating the tactical network is not unlike what has to happen in commercial networks, right? So we had applications on our cell phones that couldn't be introduced until the backbone networks from cell phone providers were robust enough to support it. So when the iPhone came out in 2007, we didn't start out with FaceTime because the 3G networks wouldn't support video, right? Well, it's not any different when it comes to our tactical networks, and so we have to synchronize the delivery of transport and the delivery of the applications that use them. And so in the area of common operating environment, I want you to think about 3 computing environments that should be very familiar to all of you as well. It starts at the lowest echelon with our soldiers, and we have a handheld computing environment. This happens to be an iPhone, but at least the initial instantiation of the handheld computing environment is an Android commercial device supported by the NetWarrior program. But we don't want that to just be the NetWarrior software. We want to be able to run every application that a soldier uses on a handheld device to be able to put it and integrate it into that handheld device and deliver it over the lower tactical network that we're providing. At the very top level, we have what we call the command post computing environment. And that's about a server-based, think of it as your desktop environment. And so we have the initial versions of our command post computing environment. We talked about releasing a software development kit last year. Today at AUSA, Some of our industry partners are already building on top of that framework environment to begin to converge our mission command applications on top of that framework. And the core of that command post computing environment has been used to support warfighters. We're going to use it as the core of Defender 20. And when I talk about a different way of doing acquisition, right, we have a much greater tolerance right now to continue to make changes and drive rapid DevOps, soldier-driven changes to our applications. And the version of software that's being demonstrated here at the systematic booth is different than the one we used for the last warfighter, and between now and Defender 20, we're going to continue to add features through that DevOps process to deliver to Defender 20 early next spring. So just a whole different way of thinking. In the past, we might have just frozen that software in anticipation of some future test and lost years of development time, and now we're taking a much more aggressive, agile approach to delivering this capability.
So this idea of convergence is about less is more. So we've got hardware and software that are converging from as many as 15 battle command systems that we've all grown up with and that many of you helped our Army design and implement over the last 20 years. But now we're taking those individual systems, each of which was optimized probably with its own server, developed as independently operating software, and then lots of lines of code to integrate with all the other mission command systems, and we're converging those onto the common operating environment. And each of the centers of excellence, and I only represent one at the Mission Command Center of Excellence, but all of my partners and peers out in the Army, each of those centers of excellence own a piece of that convergence effort. And they own a piece of taking what is today AFATADS, or what is today TAEUS or AMDUs, or our mission command systems that we've perfected and optimized over the last 20 years, and converging those hardware and software onto this common operating environment. And that effort is underway now, and our roadmap essentially has that convergence occurring over the next 6 years by the end of FY25. That allows us, as the capability sets are being delivered with some incremental capability into the network, it allows us to achieve greater efficiencies that contribute to now the bottom left quadrant, which is our interoperability, line of effort 3. And so certainly, as you could imagine, with many of our allies and partners, and even with our joint partners here in the U.S., it's difficult for all of those partners to be able to hear and see and interoperate with us with 15 different battle command systems. If they're all operating in the same common operating environment, then our allies and partners are far more able to train and fight with us, because as we expect, we're not going to fight alone today or in the future. And so this interoperability capability baked into as a fundamental underlying principle of our modernized network is of great importance. Related to that, as we move to the bottom right corner of the quad chart in front of you, is our ability to modernize our command posts and our ability to exercise mission command and control, not just from a static command post inside of a fixed location, but on the move and at any location that the commander might choose to lead his force. So the capability sets will deliver that incremental capability, and concurrent with that, we've got a new program to modernize our command posts that will allow us to integrate some of those capability sets concurrently with modernizing our command posts. And those command posts will be more survivable, more mobile. They'll be less tent-based and much more vehicle-based to allow a quicker setup and teardown time. It'll allow us to integrate opportunities to integrate things like deception packages, remoting antennas, minimizing our EMS signature, and having tools to be able to see all that inside of our command post. So those are all related capabilities inside of the command posts and are important to how we're modernizing the network.
So for CAPESAT 23, what's different when it comes to common operating environment? I'd say the biggest changes are really going to be focused on, now that we've got the framework built, CAPESAT 23 is about delivering more cloud-based capability, more analytic capability. As we look to the availability of those resources in that time frame, it's about taking the mission command systems that we've now begun to converge and make them smarter, leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, and bringing in meaningful tactical cloud capability where we can apply it given our bandwidth constraints. We do not want mission command systems to be reliant on the cloud, but we do want them to be enabled by the cloud. And we've got a great plan here to get after that with 4 specific pilot efforts that we can share with you. The other thing that we're going to be able to begin to apply, and I'm really excited about what this offers to our soldiers, is we're going to be beginning to add some additional tools on top of the command post computing environment that I'm just going to describe as a multi-domain toolkit. So we have a new program starting that will be available in the CAPESAT 23 time lane called Cyber Situational Understanding. And so it has the ability to overlay information on cyber and network operations on top of the geo-referenced common operating picture. And so we begin to combine the cyber domain, the EW domain, and the LAN domain together. And so those kinds of multi-domain operations in other toolkits like the EWPMT tool that now begin to converge and provide that multi-domain toolkit that we talked about. And so we want this mission command system, we want all these common operating environments that we're delivering to have applications that support functionality from across all of the multi-domain operations for our commanders. And to the extent that the tools can help our commanders synthesize that data, we don't want the technology to get in the way. And so that's something we see emerging in that 23 timeframe.
So this is really what we see based on what we've heard from you, what we've heard from our science and technology teammates, and, and where we are looking to go for CAPESAT 23, okay? But we have right now with CAPESAT 21, we are converging on a set of solutions, and as we start looking to 23, we are very divergent in our approach. We want to know what we might be missing. We want to know what might else be out there that we need to kind of put into our path, okay? So let's go ahead and go to the next chart. As I told you earlier, we got our guidance from General Murray to break it out into capability sets. We're joined by General Murray here today. We're looking at, there's a lot of plates spinning right now in Team Network. There's a lot of things going on as we really batten down the hatch and lean in heavy on CAPESAT 21. There's a lot of work we're doing simultaneously, and this is happening across fiscal years to actually start procuring in 22 and start fielding capability in 23. The work starts right here, right now. And our science and technology teammates are already doing that work. Many of our industry partners are already doing that work. And as we look over time, what we believe the path to getting us there is kind of right here. You see in big letters, TEM. That's Technical Exchange Meeting. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. That's 2021 November in Austin, Texas, and where we've got all comers that are focused on, bringing to bear solutions that we think will be ready for us to start prototyping later this year, 21 and 22, and get into our network design by 23. The other things that we want to take a look at, once that happens, we're on a path to kind of start the experimentation. And while we got S&T and experimentation going on, there's going to be a point where we got to tie this into an operational test and tie it into our integrated tech network and see where it fits. Then we start the procurement path and the production and then the fielding. And that's kind of the timeline over time. And you can see those marks down there, some of the solutions we believe are going to be readily available: enhanced anti-jam, commercial low Earth orbit and mid Earth orbit satellites, and mission command kind of improved hardware, software, wearables, things as integrated visual augmentation system, and other things that the other cross-functional teams will be delivering. We got to have that tied into our network design. And by 23, really, convergence, a underpinning of a data fabric that allows us to synthesize all the data in the tactical space and really make sure that we can converge a lot of these legacy systems. So, Dave, if you want to reiterate on anything I might have missed on this chart.
So what I want you to take away from a chart like this is that we're trying to combine a desire to be very agile, looking at new technologies, with some discipline that allows us to deliver integrated capability that we're confident works together. And so we do that. And in fact, I was at breakfast this morning. I had a retired general officer come up to me and he says, look, all the technology in the network space is moving so quickly. How do you keep this from turning into a free-for-all, right? How do you keep it from just being a constant churn of new technologies and you can't possibly guarantee that they work together? And I think the short answer there is you got to apply some discipline to this process. And this is a disciplined process. And so we have a preliminary design review where we bring things together. But at the same time, right now, as we look at 23, we're at the divergent part of that process, where we're looking very broadly at alternative ways to communicate. And as we get closer to the point of fielding, we have to then converge on a detailed technical design that we think works. And so in the past, if we had a program that did that, it would be an opportunity for industry. And once the contract was awarded, they'd think, oh, it might be another 10, 15 years before there's another opportunity to compete. Not in this strategy. The opportunity to compete, the on-ramps and the off-ramps are every 2 years, right? And that means a couple of things. If you're a vendor and you're part of the CAPESAT 21 architecture, that's awesome, great. Doesn't mean you're in 23. You better bring your best pricing, you better bring your best product, you better bring your best innovation, and you should expect to compete on a full and open competitive basis. And so we're going to use some agile contracting vehicles and agile acquisition authorities to get things moving, and then we're going to drive to full and open competition, driving for best value, because we know that no network can support the Army if it's unaffordable. And so we have to watch how we look at all of the available technologies, because in this kind of a process, we're rarely limited by good ideas and technology. We walk around the show today, we see all kinds of great available capabilities and technologies, but we're limited by money. And so it's about what is the affordable network set that we can deliver every 2 years with a disciplined process, so we can show our stakeholders that it's going to work all together before we spend the kind of money it's going to take to equip the Army with this kind of capability.
So let's go ahead and go to the next chart. So I talked briefly about the Tech Exchange meeting in Austin, okay? Here's when it is. It's 21 November, Austin, Texas. And the focus is really, it's all about capability set 23. Day one is going to be very technical discussions. We want the biggest, smartest, big brain engineers that are going to work in the small groups and chart out a course and a path to excellence. You're going to hear from our science and technology teammates from the C5 ISR Center. They're going to talk about opportunities for cooperative research and development agreements and things like that, because we want to get, if you have an emerging technology, we want to make sure we can get it in the lab, see how it will work in a contested or a congested environment, and make sure that we can make some of this stuff work. Okay, so we're looking for opportunities there, 20 to 21 November. Okay, we're going to have a bigger, broader session on the 21st. And again, it's going to be at the JW Marriott in Austin, Texas, home of the Army Futures Command, home of the Capital Factory, home of Army Applications Lab. I see him over in the room with us. Okay, so you can register on FedBizOps. The registrations are out. Any questions about the Tech Exchange meeting or anything we've talked about thus far? This must be day 3 of AUSA, because no questions. General Murray, you got a question? We talked about, you missed our video, but this whole thing is being driven by soldier touch points. He didn't see soldier touch points on the chart, which is a very good catch from a very wise commander, okay? Soldier touch points are the reason this plan is actually happening, okay? What we received from soldiers in the 82nd who were leaning ahead of where we were on our path got us on this path to an integrated tactical network. Soldier touch points remain a part of this program over time, and we're going to continue to map those out. So you're absolutely right, sir. It was not on the chart, but it is the most critical element of our modernization path. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So there are very distinct differences between IBCT, SBCT, ABCT. Do you imagine having parallel development paths and experimentation paths to go through 23, 25, 27, et cetera, in order to keep up pace to field every 2 years to all 3 of those formation types? Or what are your thoughts about that?
So I think the parts of the network that we're likely to employ are going to be very similar in those formations. Obviously, the radio density is going to be different. The integration is a little bit different, but I don't see it as separate developments, but rather the application of a similar network to each of those unique brigade formations with a density and allocation that makes sense for those platforms. That can't be the only question. We're not going to give out beer if there's no questions.
Sir. Afternoon, sir. I used some of the integrated tactical network in my time in Europe, and I found the products that we used were fantastic, but they rely on commercial infrastructure. And so in an environment where the infrastructure either doesn't exist, like parts of Eastern Europe or where I was, or where it's degraded, what's the way forward there?
Yeah, so they can leverage commercial infrastructure, but they're not solely reliant on commercial infrastructure. That's why the advanced networking waveforms that we're providing, with leveraging commercial waveforms that are actually network resilient, will allow us to not be held hostage by commercial infrastructure. But if we have an environment where we can leverage commercial infrastructure, we absolutely want that to be part of the solution. So integrated tactical network is not solely reliant on the commercial infrastructure. You had some limitations because I don't think you had a full fielding of some of the advanced radios.
But I guess I'll add is that I think you hit on something that's really important and that distinguishes the tactical networking from the commercial space. When you're leveraging the commercial infrastructure, from the point of your device into the backbone network is pretty much straight into fiber. And the constraint is really only between you and that cell phone tower. When that isn't available, when that's taken away from us, now the backbone's got to be provided by our forces, and that's why the enhanced density of VSATs, as well as other transport capabilities, are so necessary to tie all that together. That's why we're talking about things like an aerial tier. That's why we're talking about tropospheric, troposcatter systems. That's why we're talking about trilos and those high bandwidth augmentations and making it all work together. But I don't think there's any doubt that in the absence of the commercial infrastructure, you do have a different kind of network that's going to behave a little differently. We're trying to take that into account through our experimentation, but that's a great question.
Are you also looking at adjunct mission spaces, homeland, critical infrastructure, disaster response, all of these other associated things outside of the classic central focus you're looking at?
Pardon? Yeah, we have some systems looking at that, but the focus of this is about warfighting in a multi-domain environment against a peer adversary in large-scale combat operations. That's our major focus as a team of teams here, but yeah, absolutely. But there, in situations like that, you have a lot of freedom to leverage or bring along your own version of a commercial infrastructure if it goes away. But so I think that problem is a little not as hard to solve as the contested environment where you're contested in space, cyber, and spectrum, and you got to fight your way through it.
Thank you. General Bassett, you mentioned Cyber SU, but I didn't see it on the schedule chart on the previous one. Was that just implied, or did I miss that?
No, it wasn't one of the technologies we're specifically looking at on that. We kind of picked a few available technologies. Cyber SU is a separate program of record moving towards its RFP release here coming up real soon. And one of the things that I think excites me the most about Cyber SU is that industry's actually listened. And so the things that I'm seeing demonstrated here that are built on top of that command post computing environment SDK, we're finding that folks are able to build very quickly. They're able to deliver a lot of functionality very quickly, and it's integrated without having to deliver new servers on the battlefield. And so the more industry does that, and in fact, one of the things we're hoping to do here real soon is to get that same environment down to the Army Applications Lab and start to have some applications built natively on it by AFC. So we're really excited about the other kinds of things we can add creatively to that framework. Cyber SU is just one of the things, and that's coming up here real soon.
Gentlemen, I got a question in terms of, you mentioned secure but unclassified. Where do you see a secret releasable network coming into this between 21 and 23?
So great question, and part of our line of effort 3 interoperability aspect of it is thinking through what level of classification is provided at each echelon. And as we modernize the network, one of the key considerations is being able to get the Army's center of gravity off of SIPR, or secret, as its primary warfighting enclave, and move more towards our a mission secret or secret releasable primary warfighting enclave. Initially, that will be achieved through hardware separated enclaves. As the capability sets and technology allow us some greater flexibility, and we are able to overcome some of the technology gaps that we've got right now, that could be and will certainly be a software divided solution where you've got a single enclave that's or a single bit of hardware that it allows multiple classifications on the same on the same piece of hardware, as opposed to hardware segregated as it is today. So modernizing our network incrementally allows us to introduce some of those capabilities over time, and our allies and partners are very excited about that, because right now we say, look, come train and fight with us. And it's very difficult when our primary enclave to communicate and provide a common operating picture is SIPR.
So my question is, like, whenever I hear integrated network, one of my main concerns is, for operators, how are you guys determining how much information is too much information? Because when you're in a stressful environment, there's only so much before you get sensory overload and some mistakes get made. So. Is that something you guys are addressing?
So as technology provides the ability to have too much information, then commanders are you know, that's something that we certainly wrestle with even today. Even, you know, and as technology provides us greater opportunities, it's even going to be a more important consideration moving forward. Much of what we're faced with today is limited by bandwidth and what we're able to give our commanders and leaders and soldiers at different echelons. But it's constantly a trade-off that we make, and in some cases, as we and my peers write requirements, we're writing those requirements much less prescriptively, and we're attempting to say we believe we need this capability, and the ability to see this or do this or process this, and then we're letting the engineers be able to say, well, if you want this much, it'll cost you this much, and it'll have this impact on bandwidth. If you're able to get by with just this much, then here's how many more pieces of equipment you can have. Here's how many more units can be fielded. Here's how much greater performance you can have. And so in some cases, by us writing less prescriptive requirements, it's helping us identify some of those important trade-offs between just because we can get the information to every single soldier in the formation doesn't mean we should.
One of the things we found in the early adoption of these tools is we want tools that allow an operator to show only the overlays and information that are relevant to their mission, and to be able to do that without having a plethora of different tools within the battle space at the same time. And so we found in some of the early experimentation that when you give them this powerful configurable tool, sometimes they'll create a whole lot of information and overshare it on the network. So one of the changes we've made going forward was to make sure the tool provides some feedback when the underlying transport has the capacity to support everything trying to push over the network, and when it doesn't. And so that was some of the big changes we saw even since the last warfighter. So you give them a powerful tool, and then you never lose sight of the fact that simplicity may be the most important function you provide, and then try how do you manage that in terms of the interface.
Yeah, but I think your question ties right back to General Murray's question. It is about the soldier feedback, the leader feedback on echelon. So at the lowest tactical echelon, what you get from that rifleman that's going to either be wearing the Net Warrior device or leveraging an integrated visual augmentation system, he's got to still make he's got to decide in the heat of battle, and he doesn't be overloaded with decision-making tools. He's got to be able to decide, or observe, orient, decide, and act at a pace faster than the adversary when the world's blown up around him. On echelon, more complexity has to be synchronized. At the core division level, you're synchronizing all the enablers, so a lot more demand for visualization tools and everything else. But the way we get that is exactly what General Murray asked about, and that's the soldier feedbacks. It's getting out to combat training center rotations. It's doing live joint forced entry exercise operations with the 82nd Airborne Division. It's corps and division warfighter exercises where an entire battle staff is put to its paces, and you got to see these these tools in the works and how they perform and get that feedback and make the adjustments. That's why leveraging the model that we've done with industry in this kind of this DevOps or DevSecOps model, where we're getting that feedback and we're making the adjustments, we got to change. We got to change the way we do what we're doing, and we are changing. We are changing in a big way. The other thing we got to do is we got to test differently. We got to test, fix, and continue to iterate, because we don't want to be held, kind of as a test result gets reported 7 months later, and we've already migrated beyond, the version of software that was implemented during that test. That's yesterday's news. We're moving out, and we're moving out with feedback, and it ties back to those soldier touch points.
Gentlemen, as you were working, you said, for the multi-domain, and both of you have lived this with looking at just a network that's supporting the signal and the warfire. How do you look in the future of bringing in medical network, log network, and the other independent networks that are still doing their own processes as you're working forward?
So I think the first step in that process is we stop thinking of them as separate networks, and we think about converging them onto a common backbone. We've seen some progress in that, at least in terms of the transport side, as we look at capabilities like McNay that allow you to carry additional classification levels onto the colorless core backbone. And as we take on what today is known as kind of the CSS VSAT network, which is another kind of separate network just for sustainment, we're looking at how we can bring it in and integrate it, is something we're going to call the sustainment tactical network, kind of bring it all in together. And we're looking at a whole range of different approaches to that. I'm asking the team to look at things like managed services. I'm asking the team to look at any range of capabilities, mix of kind of the things we're doing in ITN and other capabilities, so that we don't end up with a sustainment network or a medical network that's entirely separate for what we're doing for the rest of the Mission Command network. And so that kind of convergence absolutely on our radar.
Gentlemen, you mentioned trying to leverage DevOps, DevSecOps for capability development now. I was wondering if you're familiar with the recently released DoD CIO DevSecOps reference design doc, and if so, I mean, how closely aligned are you with that authoritative document in regards to how you're implementing DevSecOps or DevOps?
So we are definitely, I've got my chief data officer has been, tying us in with the OSD and with the DoD CIO and with the Army's CIO G6 to make sure we are aligned with that DevSecOps model, and we're working that with all of our teammates at Aberdeen, both on, not only on the C3T side, but working it with, our counterparts on the PEO, IEW&S side as we're going forward. Okay, but yeah, that framework. I mean, if you look at it's really more of a framework and guidance and policy guidance. But that's what we were operating underneath that guidance. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, no more questions? I think we'll wrap it up at this point. First of all, we are, as General Bassett said, right, we are, as part of CapeSet 21, we are delivering capabilities right here, right now, to address immediate capability gaps, and we're not moving out as fast as any of us would like. That question came up yesterday in a media roundtable. Do you think, with all the Army Futures Command and all these cross-functional teams and all these modernization efforts, do you think you're moving too fast? And my answer is absolutely not. I will tell you, the only thing that slowed us down has been the availability of flexible funding in the year of execution. Because I'll tell you what, units want what we're delivering right now, okay? And they're going to want a capability that you can provide us as part of CapeSet 23 that's going to give us more capacity and more resiliency. What we got to ensure as an Army is that we have the predictable, adequate, timely, and sustainable funding that allows this path that we're on to be flexible enough for us to provide the best possible capability over time. Hey, thank you all for what you do for our Army. Thank you all for what you do, because the industry partnership is absolutely critical to everything we're trying to do. So thank you very much.